I'm going to keep telling you, this doesn't have to feel hard all the time. Life can be incredibly uncomfortable. Life can be challenging. Life can be so painful. Our big emotions can consume us, paralyze us in fear. And yet, we can also be filled with joy and gratitude and find those little moments of peace and contentment. And every single human on this planet, regardless of your gender and your roles and what your family looks like and your health conditions, you deserve to feel good. Now, today I'm going to share with you Cherylanne Skolnicki. She is a woman. She's a woman. Guess what, guys? She's a woman. Oh, gosh. Cherylanne Skolnicki is one of America's leading authorities on work-life integration, and she's helping women live their happiest, most fulfilling lives. I sat down with her and we talked about perfectionism and all things, balance. Everyone loves that question. How do you balance it all? I don't do traditional things. I don't live a traditional lifestyle. And I always ask myself, does this feel good? And if it doesn't feel good, I ask myself why it doesn't feel good. But remember, we do have to do uncomfortable things. Sometimes we just got to get shit done in order to move forward. But if that's your mentality 24 hours a day of like, get shit done, get shit done, get shit done, and you didn't do anything that day that filled your cup up, your soul, your body, your mind, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, and you were just checking things off the box, and you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, not this, then you know something needs to change. And in order to change, you got to step into the brave zone. You got to step it up. You got to be courageous. You got to look at your guilt. You got to look at your fear. It's the little tiny actions, the micro actions that you take that are going to change your life. So I'm really excited for you to dive into today's podcast. You can check out Cheryl. She is at CherylAnneSkolnicki.com. I'm going to spell her name for you. CherylAnne, and Skolnicki is SKOL Nikki, NICKIY. You're going to find all of the details about her in the show notes. She's going to talk about her podcast as well. We need to have more of these conversations, ladies. We need to have more conversations about women taking back control of their lives. You do not need to start a business to do that. You can be where you are right now and take a stand for how you want to feel. Stay-at-home mom, corporate, CEO, whoever you are, whatever you are doing, you are enough. And I'm telling you right now, when you stand in your power, when you stand in how you want to feel, you are directly influencing your children, your home, and every human around you. So, let's dive in, and I'll see you on the inside. Cherylanne, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
I was on your podcast as well too. And we're like, hey, how did we find each other? Like, I don't know. And that's the beauty of this. When you start having other people, do some research for you, you find these amazing people and you're like, oh my gosh, like attracts like. And I just think it's really, really important. I always tell people, especially if I'm interviewing, like, go listen to their podcast, go follow them, because where you're focusing your energy and attention will grow. And sometimes I feel like podcasting world, once you're in it, you're like, oh, there's this whole new world of the way of being in the world where we don't need to censor ourselves. We can just have these real conversations. And then when you start following, people, and there's all these connections, you're like, oh, it's a way to think and be. And I know today we're going to be talking a lot about balance, which I say balance is bullshit, but I know we probably have very similar aligned beliefs on balance.
Yes.
But I get so triggered by that word.
By the word.
Yeah. They're like, how do you find balance? So I'm curious what that is for you.
I think that's so true that it's a triggering word, so much so that we almost didn't include it in the brand when we were doing branding work many years ago. And here's how I've reconciled the term. I think, we're probably about the same age. I grew up in a corporate environment being kind of spoon-fed work-life balance as the goal. And the slide that was always up on the PowerPoint was this like scale with a pile of rocks on one side, right? And then like a different pile, and it was perfectly in balance. And that was the visual metaphor for balance. I think that is complete nonsense, right? Because it's a static metaphor. Like the idea behind it for me would be that you can perfectly assemble your life and then like don't move a muscle because you'll tip it out of balance. And nobody wants that. And anyone living it knows that's not practical. My visual metaphor for balance is Misty Copeland dancing in the ballet, right? A totally different metaphor. So it's this dynamic transition where you're in movement all day with strength and with grace, and your job is to land the pose. So no matter where you are in your life, whether I'm in this interview with you, whether I'm training the new puppy, whether I'm planning my daughter's birthday, any of those things that might happen in a single day, I just want to land that pose. I want to be all in. I want it to be beautiful. I want it to be strong. And then I want to move on to the next one. And that is where, for me, like balance comes back into play as a word that makes sense, because that's a entirely different view of balance than what I was fed in my, kind of growing up corporate years.
It's interesting how the stories were taught, like the metaphors that were shown, how that creates one definition or perception in our mind. And then we're just using that as our focal point. And then as you grow and you're gathering more information or experiences, you can change that definition or story in your mind. And
Yes.
Two people can be having a conversation saying, well, I say it this way or I say it that way, but you're saying the same thing. Just
Totally.
in maybe a different language or using different terminology, which is why I'm so passionate. I'm like, ladies, whatever work you want to do in the world, go do it, because people need to hear it the way that it's going to come out of your mouth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So I want to talk about, this kind of brings up perfectionism.
Mm-hmm.
And how, we do have that visual in our mind, because I'll hear people say, okay, because I talk about energetic time management, right? So you're planning, and I know you have a way of planning as well. And they're like, okay, so this week I'm going to I'm having a date night with this kid. And then next week I'm having a date night with that kid. And then I have to put my partner here, and then I have to do this and this. And one, that's coming from external. Like it's all like, I got to create space and pockets of time for everybody else, because the rocks need to be the same on each side. So curious your perspective on that conversation and how perfectionism comes into this, like, I got to achieve this balance, this perfect balance or alignment.
Yeah. I had someone share with me many years ago, probably 20 years ago. It was this phrase, and it ended with a fill in the blank. Okay. So I'll give it to all your perfectionist listeners. It was, there is no perfect fill in the blank. Now, that sounds so dumb and simple unless you're a perfectionist. And immediately you're like, well, yes, there is. There is a perfect dinner to make for my family tonight. There is a perfect thing to choose from this menu at this restaurant. There's a perfect outfit for this day for what I am doing today. There's a perfect paint color for this room, right? For the framework we're in is there is a perfect way to do something. There is one way.
There's a perfect way to parent.
Exactly. One and only one way. And if that is our goal, is I am in this kind of treasure hunt or quest for the one perfect fill in the blank, we're just in a chronic dance with disaster. And instead, what I tell myself is there are lots of good ways to whatever the thing is. So when I think about structuring a week, there is no perfect week. There are a number of ways that could be really good, and they might be different from week to week. It might change from what I thought it was to what it turns out to be, but we want to be in that that range of really good instead of the one perfect, elusive, structure for a week or date with our husband or whatever it is.
I've had so many healthcare practitioners tell me, especially the really good ones, when I say good, I mean like forward thinking, like the ones that are firmly planted, like in life, and they have a family and they're like living it. They'll say, listen, Heather, I work with a lot of ambitious, I just had this conversation with a chiropractor. I work with a lot of athletic people, type A. They come in here and they're like, fix this problem, like get to the point, like, like I want pressure, I want pain, like get all the cracks out. I want to move on. And then I even had this when I was going through cancer and I was like restoring my body. My naturopath said the exact same thing to me. And I was like, I didn't realize I was a perfectionist. I did not know that I was a perfectionist, because if you looked outside of my life, I didn't come across that way. But internally, I had such a uncomfortable relationship with messy. Mm-hmm. And I don't just mean like a messy room, that my room would actually be messy because I was afraid to clean it up, because what if I couldn't do it all perfectly?
Oh, we hear this all the time, don't we?
Or the food, how to heal your body. It's ridiculous. I don't know which parenting strategy to do. When I'm yelling at my kids, I need to pick up that book off the shelf. And I'm like, no, you don't. You need to trust yourself. Go ahead.
Yes.
What were we going to say?
I was going to comment that, don't you think there's sort of the perfectionists who own it, like, oh yes, card carrying perfectionists, and then those who are in denial because they're like, but I'm not perfect, right? But the denial part, the saying like, but I'm so far from perfect, I'm messy or I'm disorganized, is sort of they're still in a quest for it, but their reconciliation is like, well, I'm not there yet, so therefore I must not be perfectionistic. I work with a lot of perfectionists in Brilliant Balance. It seems to be like attracts like, right? So it seems to be a piece of who we get. And I've been on a long journey to try to reshape my relationship with that, with black and white thinking, with all or nothing, and with the quest for perfect. And it's been a long journey, but I have so much more freedom now to live in that range of really good, which is, there's so much more ease there. And it lets me take more action more rapidly.
I love that. Let's talk about that. Action more rapidly. So I always say magic happens in the action. And I think when you get into it, realizing absorption of information versus integration of information is different, like two different things, right? People will say, I need to know. I'm like, most likely, if you were like a personal development junkie and you read all the books and listen to the podcasts, I just told this to a woman last week. I'm like, okay, you're going on an information detox. Now it's integration. Now it's action time. And that's where all your perfection shit's going to come up. And you have to really start doing the mindset work and resistance. What's your relationship with resistance?
Mine?
Yeah. Or how does that show up?
Oh, so I'm sure we've all read the same stuff. So for me, the War of Art was a pivotal read. If you haven't read it, please go read it. It's Stephen Pressfield's book. And the concept of fighting through the resistance through imperfect action really landed for me after that book. And the knowledge that really everything I want is going to require a level of demon slaying, right? And that's how I refer to it, is I literally picture it sort of as this like demon slaying adventure that, everything, these little irritations are going to rise up to try to keep me from my purpose, from what I'm really here to do, whether it's in my inner critic, in my head game, whether it's something that shows up in my family life or in my environment. I just expect it now. And I think my reframe has been to learn to harness that as a force, like to give me something to push against to get leverage. So that was another helpful kind of word picture for me, is if you can't get up without pushing against something, right? And that's how I have to think about the resistance, is it's my force to push against.
I've never heard of it that way, which is you can't get up unless you push against something. That's
Yes.
interesting. That like gave me a really, really good visual.
Mm-hmm. It
Interesting.
comes out of aerospace, that an airplane takes flight because it has the resistance of the air underneath it. And I think about it more like, you're going to push up off the desk to stand or off the arms of a chair, but there has to be something solid, and that gives you the ability to kind of get higher. So I think about that a lot when the resistance rises, which it does every day. Every day there's something to push through, because I believe we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable to get what we want, and just settling into that feeling of, an easy life is like a life lived on the couch. And who wants that? Nobody wants a life where they just sit on the couch all day, but that's easy and it's comfortable. But if you want something good, there's going to be some discomfort involved in going to get it. It's not going to be a path of complete ease. So learning to kind of embrace that feeling, and to grow through it has been huge.
Can you talk a little bit about the difference between easy and ease? Because I think people discount, and I can see this shift happening in the personal development world, but in the marketing of it, 5 easy steps to getting everything that you want. Six steps to getting your children to listen to you. Like all of these things. And no one's talking about like the emotional journey that you need to go through. It's like, do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you'll get there.
Also, piece of cake.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess when language really, I'm such a words girl. So language really matters to me. And when I was playing with words, the word easy is actually very unappealing to me. Like I love a challenge. So easy to me implies like almost cheating. Like I don't want things to be easy. But ease carries these connotations of like flow, right? Of a sense of grace, of a fluidity, like an ability to kind of like move through life or move through a room without so much white knuckling of the steering wheel. And that in every area of my life, I'm looking for a little bit of ease, not for things to be easy, but for kind of that give and flow and room. Like when you wear a dress that just fits great and you feel like you can move in it and nothing's pulling and tugging in the wrong spot, and you just kind of can be, right? You're almost like not thinking about the dress. That's what ease feels like to me. Like a dress that just fits great. Right. But if I've got something where I'm fussing with the waistband and it's a little too tight in the hips, and then that's what it feels like to me when things don't have ease. That's like the white knuckling. I'm trying to be in a space I don't quite fit. It requires a level of control, like, or a perception of like being able to exert control over it that I don't like. And it just doesn't honor the way the world really works, right? Which is you're in flow with something bigger than yourself. You're not actually fully driving every step of it. So I like to kind of release my grip on the handlebars a little bit and look for that ease, which very importantly, Heather, is counterintuitive for me. Like I, by nature, would be a white knuckler. So it's been a huge journey to get to that place, but it's been powerful and powerful for so many of the women that I work with too.
Okay, let's talk about white knuckling. I wrote this quote yesterday. I put it on Facebook. I can feel the resistance finally letting me in. One door, a crack, a tiny opening, allowing me back in my own home to myself. I've been staring at this door for many years, continuously attending to it, never avoiding and always believing one day it would open. So the reason why I wrote this, and we'll talk about white knuckling, and I'll give you my example. So writing this book, for many years, had the vision of writing a book. And when I say vision, it just would not leave me alone. It was like a nagging ache. I do not identify as a writer. So the thought of embarking on this was annoying to me. Like, it wasn't like, oh my gosh, it wasn't a vision I wanted to embody. And it just came and everyone's like, when's your book? When's your book? Where's your book? And I could just tell my resistance around it was so big that I'm like, fine. So I finally started leaning in, leaning in, leaning in. And every coping strategy that I've had to avoid resistance came in. Fatigue, like, oh my gosh, so tired. I don't, using the excuses. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Finally decided to hire a writer to help me. Had to work through the shame and the guilt of I failed because I'm not writing this book and this isn't perfect. And then now going through this process going, oh man, I would have been doing the reader a huge disservice talking to people in the industry saying, Heather, do you not realize that like some of the greatest writers have ghostwriters and like that's how the industry works? I'm like, no. Do you think you could be a coach, a mom, like all of these other things, and not identify or even have a desire to write? The fact that you sit down at your computer for hours, you literally want to lose your mind and admit yourself somewhere. And I'm not saying this lightly as a joke. I mean this. I'm like, I cannot do this. I'm going down a rabbit hole. So I was trying to white knuckle, right? Like Heather, just push through, push through, push through. And then I practiced what I preached and I said, okay, if you gave yourself permission to do this in alignment with how you wanted to feel, yes, resistance is going to be there. That's part of the journey. What would this look like? I'm like, one, you're going to hire a writer. You are going to allow this to be fun and easy. So now when I'm editing, because I still have to read my own damn book, editing, going through it, does this feel good? Does this not? I'm doing it at a pace that is sustainable, not like clear my schedule, forget myself, neglect my needs. I'm like, nope, eat, work out, play with the kids, edit for an hour, jump in the pool, like come back. Yep. Do some coaching calls, do an interview, integrate with your life. There's resistance there, but I can pop through that so much better. It's sustainable. So I'm curious, the white knuckling versus like getting into the flow, everything I just said.
Yeah. Well, I love that you had to give yourself permission that the how was different than you thought it would be, because that's really, when I use the term white knuckling, I think that's the territory we should talk about, is it's an attachment to the how, right? It's trying to steer so tightly. I think the phrase comes from me because I apparently, as I was a little kid, really struggled to learn how to ride a bike. Like all my friends were riding their bikes and my mom was super worried because I wasn't figuring out how to ride a bike. And as I hear that story as an adult, I no longer feel ashamed of it, thankfully. But it makes me feel, it makes sense to me because I was such a controlled little person. You can't ride a bike by over controlling it, right? How do you ride a bike well? You let go a little bit. It kind of leans left and right. It has to pick up enough speed to have its own momentum. And it has to almost feel a little bit out of control to be in control. And if you put a new rider who wants to be in control on a bike, they're going to fall over a lot because they're holding on, they're trying to stay in such a perfect line, right? That they really can't effectively do the thing. That's the how. That's being attached to the how. So what I heard in your story was like, I want the outcome and I want to feel good. And so what puts me in that zone where I can get the outcome and feel good? And there's so many examples from coaching that we could talk about where women want an outcome, but they're super attached to how they're going to go get it. And that's where I think that white knuckling comes in. When I can get them to release their grip on that a little bit and reimagine all the ways they could still have the outcome, that's where that ease comes back in. That's where the doors start opening, to use your piece of writing from yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They always say, trust the journey, or it's not the destination you're after. It's the journey of who you become along the ride.
And it just might look different. I mean, this is my second business. I didn't think it would be. I thought the first one I started would be the one, that I kind of stayed in forever. And it became very clear that, I'm off track. I want to course correct here and get back in alignment with my gifts and do work that allows me to spend more of my day doing the things that I'm really drawn to do and could just lose track of time doing. And so that's an example of kind of loosening your grip a little bit and trusting that you can. I remember the day I had a Facebook audience built that had gotten to be fairly substantial for the first business, and they would not let me change the name of the Facebook page to the new business. And I had to let go of it. I had to just say, well, I guess those followers are just gone and I have to start over. There was no There was no way, right? We tried everything to bring him over. And it was such a great example of like, just release it and let it be a new thing that has some ease. And it's many times over as big as that audience was now, but it was a brave move to let go of it all.
I remember one time my husband, this was a few years ago, was working something in the back end and lost like 6,000 email subscribers, and we could not get them back. And he was losing his mind. My project manager was losing her mind. And I said, clearly I was doing a lot of work on my control issues at this point. And I was like, they were meant to leave. If they want to come back, they will come back. Like if they're really that hard up on, oh my gosh, I'm not on Heather Chauvin's email list, they will refine me. And it's trusting the process and trusting that whatever's meant, it's like accepting what is, like what is in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Control is such a thing. I always say when we're trying to control the outside, it's because we feel out of control on the inside.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. So many of the women who I cross paths with are really trying to get their life moving again towards something that they really care about. You know, it's like this quest for potential. Like I really want to fulfill my potential and I can feel it. And I know I'm meant to do something important or big. And I think it's, again, getting them to detach from the how and reconnect to the vision, but then kind of rebuild maybe a different pathway to get there, because we do get off track. Like life gets busy and full and we get busy doing laundry and driving carpool. Right? Pandemics. So it's easy to lose sight of where we're heading and just start steering really close in through this like turbulence. Mm-hmm. And anytime we get somebody to pick her head back up and reconnect with like, what do you really feel like you need to be doing? And how do we just kind of pick you up and dust you off and get you back on that path and make sure that you have enough energy to do it and that you know how to structure your time so that it happens, then like anything is possible again, right? It kind of brings back into focus that ability to dwell in possibility. And that for me is like, that's the most powerful journey I can walk someone through, is reconnecting with the big dream. I talked to a woman this morning who was just stuck, like, right? That she has a dream, but she's now dumbed it down to the point where it's barely recognizable. I said, it's like, you want this hot fudge sundae, but you're going to settle for this stale protein bar and tell yourself like, it's fine. It's not fine. Like, it's not the sundae. We're going to have to reignite your faith that the original like vision is possible. It just, your path might be different. It might take longer, it might be meandering, but let's not lose sight of that. Let's not settle for something that's, way smaller and compromised than what you really want.
The beauty of that, and what I've come to know, to trust, which has taken a lot of anxiety away and stress, is that your body and life will always show you like if you're settling. Yes. So I like recently, and I just podcast about this, I've just started on this like physical journey where I'm really taking ownership for how I want to feel in my body. And for a long time, I kept saying, just love yourself the way you are, because that's what you're supposed to do. And this deeper part of me was like, no, you're here to challenge yourself. The way you want to challenge yourself is healthy. People will think you're crazy, but they think you're crazy anyways. So just do it anyways. And the second I said yes and gave myself permission to step into that vision, I immediately was like, click, 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 like aligned, this feels good. And I don't need external validation from anyone else. But we try so hard to be like, oh, there's the vision. Oh, I look, seeking, like, does anyone else validation around me want to do that? Oh, they don't? Okay, I got to dumb it down to that, protein bar, like you're saying.
It's our approval committee, right? Like we have to consult the approval committee before we can actually move on anything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Except that committee always has somebody who doesn't want you to do the thing you really want to do.
And your body will always say to you, not this, please step into that bigger vision.
100%. Yeah. I love that you have that kind of courage. I think it's I can imagine how inspiring that is to the people who follow your podcast and know your work, is like, you're modeling that, of the courage to say, I'm going to do this the way I need to do it. I'm not really here to please everybody else and get their approval on my choices, which is so powerful, because we're not often taught that as women. So I think when we see someone who stands in opposition to the norm, it's like doubly inspiring.
Well, I started, and I don't know about you, I would love to know like your big why for starting this second business. But for me, the courage was never on my mind. I was so desperate. I'm like, am I alone? Am I alone? And podcasting, people are like, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm not alone. And then I thought, why is everyone else okay with settling? Like, why? Why are they, secret? Oh, my husband, oh, my partner. Oh, it is what it is. And I'm like, no, why? Why are you okay with that? I was never okay with that. And it was driving me crazy, literally. And I had to speak up because I thought I was alone.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that story of you pulled a community out of the ether, by just authentically sharing your own experience.
Yeah.
You asked, what was my path to it? What's my big why? I really my first business, which is kind of where the story starts, was, well, let's go back one step further. I spent the first 15 years of my career in a corporate job doing sales and marketing work for a consumer products company. And I was very successful there, right? I thought I was going to stay forever. I thought it's what I was going to do. And I reached a point about 15 years in where it became clear that I was never going to get to really unleash my greatest innate gifts inside that company. Like, I was going to be doing things I was good at, but not the things that were like I was amazing at, right? And I was always going to be using somebody else's words. We were always going to have agencies developing the marketing messaging, and like, words are my thing. That's my thing. And so I wanted to be able to take my communication gift and really use it. And I wanted to be of service. So for me, my first path to entrepreneurship was like, I have to take my greatest gift in communication and I have to match it up with a need that I see in the world and kind of solve that problem. And the first problem I saw was people's relationship with food. So my first business was in health coaching, went back when that was like a brand new thing. This was a decade ago. And I got certified as a health coach because I saw so many women in my corporate life who were faking it with feeling good about themselves, right? They weren't comfortable in their relationship with food. They had a lot of secret behaviors. They had a lot of shame around it. And it was holding them back from really stepping into their, like, for example, they might not want to give a speech at an event or present to a room of people or be seen, right? Because of all of this, like, perceived inadequacy around the way they were managing their relationship with food or with their body. And then that would carry forward as parents into the way they felt about how they were feeding their family. So my first business was in that space because I thought, if I can help them crack that code, and I had been through my own journey there and come out the other side. So I thought I can like teach through my pain and help somebody get to the other side of that. So that's where it started. Well, guess what happens? I mean, you can imagine where this goes. You start talking with women about why their relationship with food is jacked up, and it's very clear that it's never about the food, right? It's about some other part of their life where the food is just their coping mechanism. It's their numbing strategy. Whether they're under eating or overeating or just forgetting to, just being like sticking their head in the sand around their relationship. So I pivoted the business to really the work that I then felt called to do. I couldn't have seen this from the beginning. I could just see that one little problem that I wanted to solve. Once I got into it, it was like, oh, this is the gateway. Women need to stand in their own brilliance. They need to be able to see it. They need to be able to unleash it, and they need to like use it to go do something that like they're put here to do. And that became like, that was the gelling of my personal purpose, was that's it. I'm going to help women stand in their brilliance and fulfill their potential. And I'm going to make the rest of my life about doing that. So that kind of led to this work. And we're constantly evolving how we help women do that. But that purpose is crystal clear.
I think that's a really important comment, because I don't know how you said you had to do that before you've been doing this. Because I evolve very quickly as a person. And so it's people, again, I can find the perfectionism in what is my purpose? Like asking that question, like I need to know, okay, what is that model? What's
Right?
the elevator pitch? What's this? What's this? And I'm like, you got to follow the breadcrumbs and have the courage to act on it.
Yeah. And so you know what I tell her? This is this phrase has kind of come to me in the last year. I keep saying, what's your lowercase p purpose? Stop
What does
thinking
that
about
mean?
capital P purpose. Like my whole life is about this one big thing, because we get so tangled up in getting that right. Like the perfectionism that comes with us on that journey is real, because it feels like we don't want to mess that up. Lowercase p purpose is like, what's my purpose right now? What do I need to be doing this year? What do I need to be like? You felt this purpose around writing the book, and you're like, that's my right now purpose. I got to write this book because it's just been nagging at me long enough that that's what's next. And when you get the book in the world, the next lowercase p purpose will reveal itself. Like, okay, this is the next turn of the dial. So I am always telling people, give it permission to rapidly evolve. We've had women who said, I think my purpose is in, some big like nonprofit work, but they have twin daughters graduating from high school this year and they're feeling just torn in two. I'm like, what's your purpose this year? Be all in with your daughters so that you've got a bazillion memories that you can unpack forever. And as soon as they see that, they're like, yeah, that's what I meant. That's this year. That's what I'm meant to do. And then I can get on to the next one. Does that make sense? So it's like a sequencing of little purposes that line up to the big one.
I love that. It takes the total pressure off. There's no perfectionism around there. And then just to piggyback off of that, people, when I say people, of course, we're always, practicing what we preach, but sometimes we can get a download for the bigger purpose. If you're a visionary, what that big purpose is, but like you said, like what is in front of you?
Right.
And there's always this conversation of like having it all. And again, this like, I need to do it all at once. I need to be in the nonprofit. I need to do this with my kids. And I'm like, yes, but why did you have children? Like, if you want to be a stay-at-home mom, be a stay-at-home mom. Like if that's where your heart and your soul is, then do that. If you feel like, okay, that I need to be all here, all in it, or you might just do that so you can learn all the lessons. I have no idea. But if that's where you feel called, you do that. And for some, not most, I should take that back. For some, it's, I need to do a little bit of both. I need to do the work and the presence with the kids, or seasons where you're present or seasons where you're working a lot. It's really trusting that calling. How do you know what that evolution is for you? Like when it's hard to trust yourself. So how do you begin to develop that trust in knowing that that's the next step you need to take?
Yeah, it's such an important question, especially when we look at this intersection of, parenting and work, right? So most of the women in my audience are working moms, not all, but most. And that intersection of parenting and work is really tender because there's so many shoulds and there's so many people on our approval committee, right, telling us what they think. I am always listening or maybe paying attention to the inflection points. And if you look back on, your life as a mother, and I look back on mine, my kids are almost 16 and 13 and 10. Like that's kind of on their birthdays. That's where they'll all be. If I look back on that 16-year journey as a parent, like there are pretty clear inflection points where something needed to shift. And I pay attention to those. I try to see them faster, like as they're coming, and then make the adjustment, which could mean I'm leaning further into a work project or pulling back, spending more time at the office or more time at home. More like the which child needs my attention? What does my husband need? It's constantly an evolution. It goes back to Misty Copeland, right? In the ballet, we're in this dynamic dance every day. And I think where we get in trouble is we try to get on autopilot. We try to get to a place where it's like, but I already made all these decisions, so now I'm just executing. That's never really going to be true. It's really, for me, about staying tapped in really self-aware of like what's feeling a little out of sync and what alteration am I going to make. So I work on a weekly cycle. You know, I know you do too. I work on what does this week need to look like to feel in alignment. And then quarterly, roughly, I'm looking for, has there been a bigger shift? Is there some kind of bigger inflection? It often correlates with changes to the school season, you know, the sports seasons, it's mostly right now, I would say, driven by what's changing with my kids. And am I staying responsive to that so that I'm really where I'm needed? You know, like we just got a puppy, right? That's changing some things about where I'm needed. So paying attention to the full 360 picture of your life and kind of leaning harder into those curves but you have to stay tapped in. If you're on autopilot, you won't do it. You won't make the adjustments.
I think that's really important. The staying tapped in part. And yes, the autopilot. And yeah, even though like, I think as women, we're so good at looking externally to go, what does everyone else need from me during this season? Mm-hmm. We also need to ask the question, like, what do I need from me during this season? Because I'm predicting what 2021 is going to be. No one can predict that. Yeah, good luck. But when the book comes out, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm actually trying to reserve my energy now and not reserve it as in like doing less. I'm still doing all the things, but I'm asking myself, how can I scale, right? My team, my capacity, how am I reserving my body? How am I strengthening my body, my mind, like now? So and at what pace? What do I want to do? What don't I want to do? And what do I want this to look like, rather than just being constantly reactive towards your life? And this isn't even something that you have to like actively pursue. It's just you're thinking about it, right? Like, what's that going to look like?
You know, it's interesting because the book is like an intentional choice, right? You made an intentional choice to say, I'm going to create some whitewater in my life. Like, it's going to be a rough ride, but it's going to be fun. And I'm doing it on purpose. And importantly, I can see it coming. Like, I know it's up there. I can see the rapids, and I'm going to go through those and kind of get prepared. Sometimes, as you know, that happens and we don't see it coming. Like, the pandemic was a storm, right? Yeah. I mean, it came out of nowhere. Nobody saw it coming. We were not prepared. You have to make a lot of the same adjustments, but you have less lead time. So I always prefer whitewater, right? Because we did it to ourselves and get out ahead of it a little bit. And to your point, manage your energy so that you're ready and so that it stays fun instead of taking you under. Harder to do when it's an unexpected negative event, right? And we're all coming out of one.
Or we're still in it, or we don't know what's going on. I think this time, like 2020, has been really interesting because I've said whatever, you know, it's like we're a snow globe. So everything's being shooken up, and what wasn't sustainable is being revealed to you. And I am so grateful that, being the breadwinner, we were financially okay during this time because we were prepared for it. And not preparing for a pandemic, but just, you know, following those steps of like have 3 to 6 months saved, like away above and beyond that, barely having to tap into that. And I don't know when, the last 6 years I've been thinking about this, but lately I've been really passionate about, I have no financial background, but very passionate about like, you need to know your money shit, ladies.
Yes.
And it is very, very important because in times like this, to be able to say, I'm good, I'm okay, my goodness. Yes. Is, you know, white water, but expect the storm, but don't wait for it, and but just be prepared for unexpected things. And that's why I'm like, you got to have the energy. You have to have the finances. You have to have all of these things, because shit can hit the fan at any moment.
Yeah, you are so right on. I share your passion for women being financially literate and savvy and prepared. And I'm still not sure why we like miss the boat on that one broadly, or where we pick up this narrative that women are not good with money. I'm not really sure what the origin story is, but it's broad. It's broad, and it's so important that we have a clear understanding of how we make money, how we keep money, how we grow the money we have, because it's linked to so much of our peace of mind, right? So much of our security and peace of mind is like knowing that there's more where that came from, right? I know how to get it, but also that I've throttled my spending so that I have a solid foundation. You clearly feel so much better because you knew you had that in place. So I'm super passionate about that for all women.
And being able to invest in yourself.
Yes.
This is so important. I mean, you don't have to if you have an agreement and you're not bringing in income, that's okay. But there is a big power, like kind of, you know, not trap that happens where, oh, I need to ask for permission. I'm not allowed. It's like, are you a child? Like, what's going on? And just asking yourself, great, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and there's something that you desire in your life to be able to invest in, it's time to step up your game and to leap into that and go, great, I need to make it happen then, and work through all your shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so powerful to feel decision authority around money. And it's a really clear dividing line between women who do and don't. It actually has nothing to do with income level, in my experience. It's much more about mindset and the power structure in a relationship. But it is very, very transformative to have financial decision authority, right? And confidence in making those decisions. So there's so many supportive resources. We do some in my programs. There's tons of people out there, but I think getting educated is so key to being able to invest in yourself and take your own life to the next level. Like, I think everybody deserves that. It's just knowing that you can do it by standing on your own 2 feet is super empowering.
So what do you say when someone says, I don't know where to start, I'm stuck? And this could be, doesn't have to be with money. It could be in, I know you talk a lot about like career change and things like that. So just that stuckness, like I have my own ways. I think I was looking at your Instagram and we were already talking about perfectionist, but perfectionism was a way to hide or something. So when they're like, I'm stuck. And then people call them ask holes, where you ask questions and they don't take your advice. And then they keep asking you the same question again and again and again. Like, I'm stuck. And you're like, okay, well, go try this, go do this, go. Here's step 1, 2, 3. I'm stuck. So what do you say to those? Like, what's going on there?
Such a good question. I mean, I think it's why we start with mindset patterns. There really are a number of governing patterns that I think if you're stuck in any one of them, it creates this narrative in your life that plays out in so many places. So I'm like a detective on the front end, trying to understand to help you self-discover which of these mindset patterns are you stuck in. And they're like dichotomies, like doing it all or doing it well would be one of them, right? And there's like 9 or 10. And really understanding, like, are you holding this belief? And if you are, where are all the places it's showing up? And almost always one of these is the root of why they're stuck. So we start there, a little bit of detective work and self-discovery, and then, maybe more directly asking those questions if they're not getting there on their own, until we really identify, like, I think this is the through line that's causing this pattern. And look, it's showing up here and it's showing up over there and it's showing up at home and in your career. And then it's like it unravels, right? Because once you bring that into the light and the individual gets awareness of like, oh my goodness, this is affecting all of these areas, you can just start like popping them like bubbles and rewriting that narrative in a more useful way, right? So that's first. That mindset work is, we just can't skip over it. And then we can move on from there to really build the progression toward action. But people won't take action you won't manage that cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
If your belief system is different than the action you're asking yourself to take, you won't take it. So you have to align those first.
And I've seen this play out in many areas of, one, my own life, and two, when it's being reflected back to you and clients or potential clients, of course, you're not emotionally attached to it.
Right.
So you're like, just fucking leap already. Like, it's there, you have it, go do it. Right. But people are like, can you do it for me? And it's like, well, what's the belief? Like, I'm going to fix you. I'm going to do the work for you, because that's not possible. And this is why I love the self-awareness, because one, the work is never done, right? We always have more to work on. But when I can sit here and go, I'm stuck, and then call myself out on my own bullshit and say, and actually I saw a quote the other day said, bullshit, like BS, is belief system. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. Why didn't I ever figure that out? Bullshit equals BS. And so when I'm like, I'm stuck, I'm asking myself, Heather, what story are you telling yourself?
Yes, totally.
And 9 out of 10 times I'm stuck is my resistance. Because if I actually say, I know what I need to do, and I start taking that action, but what if? It could be fear, right? What if I fail? What if I, every time I'm about to invest in something, what if I don't have any money and then I lose my house and and I'm the breadwinner, and I'm like, Heather, you're fine. Like, has that ever happened to you? Do you have any evidence? Is everything maxed out and like this is the last $1,000 to your name? Right? I'm like, no. So it's interesting, but unstucking yourself.
Yeah. And I think it's so much harder to do for yourself. Like the benefit of outside perspective and someone being able to pattern analyze your speech, even like I often in that initial conversation with women, you just hear, you probably do too. Like you just hear the pattern. And when you can reflect that back to them, like here's like 5 or 6 pieces of evidence where these words got used. And do you see the pattern? Do you hear what that is all about? And they can almost always hear it, but they wouldn't have just by talking, right? But in a 30-minute conversation, you can really hear like, oh, I think I know there's a heavy dose of intuition in this work, right? I mean, I lean heavily on my intuition in those early days of trying to get somebody back on the right path, but they have to crack that code internally to buy into it. Like just being told, well, I think this is the pattern that's in the way isn't enough. Yeah. They have to really believe it's rewritable, and that if they change the belief architecture behind it, that they can get a different outcome. It's true. Right? As soon as they do, they will get a different outcome, but there's a little bit of a proving time before they fully buy into that.
That was a big aha I had about my body. Someone said, these are the 4 reasons why you will not see results in this program. And I was like, well, I'm not that one. I'm not that one. I'm not that one. And it was believing that change was possible. So when I was able to identify that was my issue, like that's where I'm going to fail every single time. If it's food, fitness, money, goals, like parenting, it's the belief. So I'm like, okay, cool. I know how to rewire a belief, or at least become aware of it. Mm-hmm. And if I know that a belief, if I have a growth mindset, which I do, and I know a belief I can change, mm-hmm. Through kind of reverse engineering or whatever we want to do, tapping, subconscious crap, whatever. There's tools for that. And if I just do the tools, the belief will change. So I was like, great. So I just focused on it. So even if I didn't believe change was possible, I still took the action.
Yes.
So that eventually the current would kind of go in that direction. But I had to believe that a belief could be
changed. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because if you're under your dominant thought is, well, this just for me. How many times will people say, well, I'm just someone who struggles with.
Oh my gosh. I get so triggered. I'm not an organized person.
Yeah.
I just, I've been like this my whole life. Yeah, no shit. Cause you have the same belief.
Mm-hmm. Right. So because once you know better, once you understand like, oh, you just keep reinforcing that same identity. And of course, your actions are going to come in alignment with that identity. So let's try a different identity on for size and see if we can get a different outcome. Right. And whether it's changing something in your body, writing a book like you're doing, starting a business, changing jobs, applying for something bigger than you thought was ever possible for you. Like that's all starts with the belief that maybe it'll work out. Yeah. Maybe it actually will work instead of not working. We spend so much time thinking about what if it doesn't work. I don't think we spend enough time thinking about what are we going to do when it does.
Yes. Mm-hmm. I love this. I could talk to you forever.
Kindreds.
I love it. Where can people find you? What do you have going on? I know you have a freebie for everybody as well.
We do. So the easiest place is our website. You can probably Google Brilliant Balance and you'll find it if you are driving and don't want to look up a URL. The URL is brilliantbalance.net. The freebie is at brilliantbalance.net/calendar. And I'll tell you what's there. What we're giving your listeners is my calendar control training. It is, it's been our most popular download ever. It is really a transformational way of thinking about planning your week so that you have an intention for what you want to accomplish and you stay in integrity to that plan. So we talk a lot about productivity being intention times integrity. You have to have both. And you can't really get to purpose and potential if you can't run your current life efficiently. So it's foundational to know how to run all the pieces and parts of your current life really efficiently so that you have space to go to the next level. And so that's why we start there. So it's at brilliantbalance.net/calendar.
I love it. And I highly recommend people check that out. There's always more to do, but there's so many resources online. And if we just act on these resources one step at a time, creating this change.
So easy. So easy. That website will get you to the podcast too, but I should mention I do have my own podcast We Had You On, and that's just called Brilliant Balance. So findable in any podcast search engine.
Perfect. And do you hang out on Instagram as well?
I do. So personally, it's at Cincy Skolnicki. Super fun to spell all these names. Yeah. That's kind of the behind the scenes view. And then we have brilliant_balance is more like inspirational quotes and links to the podcast. And I do a daily broadcast called Tea Time in the afternoon. We all take our break to catch our breath for a few minutes. So short video, like snippet in the afternoon, you can catch those on Instagram as well.
Perfect. Thank you so much. I love this conversation and I can't wait to, I don't know, I feel like I could talk to you forever and just continue on this journey of debunking balance and living on our own terms. All right, so there you have it. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation with Cheryl, and I wanted to let you know I actually have something coming up for you. So if you are interested, I'm doing something, I guess, it's not really a challenge. It's complimentary to you, but this is really about having community conversations. I'm calling it Live Alive. How can you feel more alive in your mind, your body, your soul, your relationships, your work? This is how you can make a bigger impact. All your symptoms start to go away. The disconnects that you have in your parenting, the disconnects you have in your relationships. Maybe it's how restricted you feel around your time and your energy. Once you have the self-awareness to understand how to feel in control of your big emotions and to know yourself and to know why you do what you do, and you have the strategy and action around that to get out of your own way, you can make magic happen. So there's 2 ways that you can join us. We start September 21st. I'm going to be texting you. I'll be going live on Instagram, Facebook. So if you want to get all the notifications, extra tips and insider secrets, head on over to heatherchauvin.com/alive. So that's my name, last name spelled CHAUVIN.com/alive, and you can register for free. Or if it's easier for you, just text me the word alive, ALIVE, alive. Text it to 313-710-5199. The phone number is a U.S. phone number. It's 313-710-5199. That's all you got to do. And then you're automatically qualified. You're not qualified. You've joined, you're on the list. And starting September 21st, I'm going to be digging deep into these conversations of how you can feel more in alignment with how you want to feel in your life. It's time to get out of your own way, to up level and make shit happen, ladies. Let's go.